Get started here. Thanks everyone for joining us and spending your afternoon today. This is episode 1 of the Marketing Innovation Series. We've entitled it Building Your Reputation. So we're going to talk about that concept, but in a lot of different ways. We are recording the session today, so please feel free to come back and re-listen to any parts that we go through a little too quickly. We will be taking your questions towards the end. So please type in your questions in the question and answer panel. We'll also check the chat in case you have any questions there as well. So it's my pleasure today actually to have a guest presenter, Steve Celeste, on the line. We'll talk a little bit more about his background, but I've really admired the way he's been doing his marketing. And let's jump right into it. As you can see on the screen, we're using a new presentation software called Prezi. So we're going to come back to this slide. This is kind of our agenda. We'll do our introductions. We'll talk about, as a general concept, best practices about building your reputation. And then in particular, how to captivate, how to attract people to follow your marketing, how to nurture those relationships once you've attracted them, and then eventually how to convert them into clients. That will be broadly our topics for today. So let's jump into it. As many of you know, my name is Mark Glickman. I'm an actuary by background. And I kind of have the unique perspective of I helped launch one of the large long-term care insurance company products. But over that period of time, I kind of transformed from actuary to marketer. And you might say, what's the connection there? Well, as I found out, that marketing today is a lot about analytics and statistics. And I found it extremely exciting to help the really nice LTC specialists out there that are client-centric. They're looking out for the best interests of their clients. And the ability to put them in front of more clients really became my passion, ultimately helping more families out there. So this is the first in a series of webinars. We like to provide this information, this education for free. So you don't have to partner with Buddy INS to participate in these. We just want to help people out there. Now, the purpose of the series, of course, is marketing, I think, is the biggest dilemma that we have in the long-term care insurance space. The products we're offering I think are really great for clients. It's just that they're not aware that there is a need for long-term care and that there are solutions out there, and there are dedicated professionals like yourselves out there that can provide it to them. So I transitioned my role from the home office over the last 12 months or so, and I actually did a startup company called Buddy INS, the main objective of which is to help folks like you out there connect with more clients, and really we're a partner. So we actually do outreach emails for clients. We do a lot of webinar educations, kind of like this webinar, but in partnership with long-term care specialists and advocates. And in particular, we respect relationships. So generally speaking, it is the specialists that are saying to us, I have this relationship. Can you help me do a webinar for these clients? Can you help me attract more people to attend these events? And eventually to book meetings, one-on-one meetings with the specialist, at which point I have a lot of confidence that they're going to help that client in the right way and be effective. We also are not a recruiting IMO or BGA. Everyone stays in their contracts. So we partner with a lot of the IMOs out there. We're actually on the application with the agents. I'm licensed in all 50 states. And that's kind of what a partnership looks like is we'll help you execute a lot of the things we're going to talk about. So hopefully that gives you a flavor. If you do have more questions about Buddy INS, just feel free to email me. But this session, as I mentioned, it's primarily about helping you, and you don't have to participate to be listening to this. So I'd like to introduce our guest today, Steve Celeste. I met Steve on LinkedIn, and I was really admired a lot of the marketing that he was doing. And the first thing that I saw about Steve when I went to his profile is that he had all these interviews where he was on NBC and ABC and CBS, all the major networks. And I said, wow, this guy really knows what he's doing. And as soon as I talked about him, I could tell he shared a similar passion about helping families out there with what he does, which is reverse mortgages. So Steve, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, Mark, pleasure to be with you. I am so honored and privileged to be on with everybody today. Certainly appreciate those of you who are taking the time out of your day to attend, and hope that I can provide a ton of value and that you come away from this, able to take away a few tidbits of information to better yourselves and better your brand and overall your business.
Okay. Well, tell me a little bit about your background, first of all. How did you get into the reverse mortgage space?
Yeah, so I've been in mortgages now for about 17 years, hence the receding hairline. I was in traditional mortgage lending in the subprime days. We did refinances, purchases up until about 2008 when the housing market took a huge downturn, as everybody knows. And I had to make the decision at that point whether I'm going to stick in traditional lending, which at the time, there wasn't a whole lot going on, or look into other avenues. And there was a young lady in my office having a lot of success with reverse mortgages. She was preaching the gospel of reverse mortgages and what they were doing for her and her clients and the impact that they were having. And I did some research and became educated, really fell in love with reverse mortgages, fell in love with how we're able to make an impact on the lives of our client. Here we are all these years later. I haven't looked back. It's all we do at the Stephen J. Celeste Group of PRMI. And in retrospect, probably the best career decision I ever made.
Yeah. And, I think there's a lot of similarities between the insurance space, in particular long-term care insurance, and reverse mortgages. There's a lot of good folks that are looking out for their clients. There's a lot of stereotypes about misconceptions about what are reverse mortgages, just like long-term care. People don't really understand it unless they talk to a professional like yourself. And so marketing plays such a big role. And I know that you've done a lot of different marketing. Kind of where does your passion for marketing come from?
So being in the mortgage business over the years, on paper, it looks like I've jumped around quite a bit. But in reality, I've been involved with several acquisitions over the years. And so about 5 years ago, I decided, the only way that I'm going to be able to build a brand is to do it on my own. And so how do I do that? How do I build a brand? How do I become known and recognized without taking on all the risk of opening up my own mortgage brokerage shop and all the expense that comes along with that? And so I decided, who better to brand than myself? And worked with our compliance team and really figured out how to identify my own unique brand and to have a kind of a spin-off brand, still under the umbrella of PRMI, who's my employer, but developing my own brand. And in doing so, I found that I'm able to control my own messaging. It's gotten me media exposure. Being a brand is, I think, very rewarding. And I think for those of you who work for another company or have a parent company that you work for, really figuring out how to develop your own brand is critical for your overall career path. So I fell in love with branding and marketing. I've studied it. And, I think I've become pretty good at it, at least good enough to be on your show here today, Mark.
Yeah, well, that's a perfect segue. We're going to go into kind of the next segment of the presentation. We're going to talk about building your reputation. And where I wanted to start with that was just some basics. And the key thing to remember, you see on the screen, building your brand takes time. And that's the true of marketing. You have to realize that it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's kind of the cumulative efforts of a lot of different activities that you're doing. But I want to start off with kind of reputation 101. Key things, and this is, how I think people represent themselves today and how you should be doing business with clients and what they're looking for in their professional. First of all, acting with integrity. One of the reasons, again, I wanted to connect with Steve was I could tell that A, he really knew what he was doing in the business, but B, he put his clients first. How do you think that kind of philosophy has helped you, grow your brand and build your business?
I appreciate the feedback, Mark. I'm honored that you would say that about me. It's certainly something that we work towards. It's just always doing right by the client. And in reality, there really shouldn't be all that much thought that goes into that. You should just do the right thing every day. But doing the right thing runs deeper than just acting with integrity. It's responding to circumstances that could spiral out of control if you don't get out in front of them. And so even with problem clients or clients that aren't 100% happy, getting them to a point where they are 100% happy, really working with them, engaging with them before, during, and after a transaction. I think that's critical. But always doing the right thing by the client. And I think those who have a passion for helping people, that's just going to come naturally. But again, it does speak to your brand and what your brand is a representation of you personally and your business. So it's just something to keep in mind, just always doing right by the client.
Yeah. And the second thing we kind of have is kind of our 101 is be yourself. And I think people have a tendency to not necessarily be who they are in their marketing. when they're in front of a client, or sometimes they feel like when they're in social media world that they have to present themselves differently. But what I found is that you can be yourself and represent yourself, and it's almost like a better version of yourself, when you put yourself in their marketing, because you can, edit and filter and make sure that you're representing yourself well. How do you kind of interpret that, be yourself as a basic tenet of this?
Yeah, I agree. Everybody is their own unique individual. And I think it's important to convey who you are, and we'll get to the who, what, and why in a little bit. But, putting out a consistent message on social media is important, but also showing some personality. There's a lot of buzz on social media, and it's very easy for people to get caught going down a certain direction. Be yourself, be relaxed, be calm. I would say one point of advice is words matter, and they matter a lot. And so before I put out a post, I read it 5, 6, 7, 8 times, and I edit it, and I really refine my words to ensure that the message that I'm putting out is the best possible representation of myself and my brand.
Yeah. And, we've talked about this a little bit, but helping others is really key here. Obviously, that's what you're doing when you're with a client. And, even us doing these webinars here, for me, it's about what can we help the audience with. And, I think it's more about being selfless, give to get, as they say. At the end of the day, I have a lot of confidence that we'll build our business that way, and we'll build our reputation that way. But I know you also share that philosophy.
Absolutely. Givers gain. I'm a BNI guy, been in BNI for a little while now. Givers gain. The more you put into a relationship, the more you put into your brand, the more you put into your messaging, the more you're going to get back.
Yeah. Let's jump into kind of the next segment of this, which is creating your brand. And this is kind of what you alluded to before, the who, what, why. So tell us a little bit about, if you're kind of creating this from the start, how do you develop your persona, so to speak, in marketing?
Yeah, so I think, putting out a consistent message, so when a prospective client experiences a pain which you can alleviate, they think of you, right? So that really is how I came up with my brand. Who am I? Number one. What do I do? And then why is it important? And so when I'm putting out messaging that I want people to resonate with, that's what first, it's who I am. And so introducing yourself, making sure they know your name, making sure they understand what you do. And then, of course, why what you do is important. Storytelling, I think, is a great way to convey this message. Telling stories about how you've helped people, what the pain points were that they were experiencing, and then how the product or the service that you offer can help alleviate those pain points. And so if that person hearing your message ever does experience those pain points, you are the professional that they think of first.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people out there, especially those that are trained in insurance sales, we learn products and we're technicians, and sometimes that leads us to lead with the solution. Instead of first kind of being natural, being ourselves, introducing ourselves, like you said, telling a story, helping resonate with the client. Those are the things that really build that relationship and build your reputation. At the end of the day, they have confidence because they know that you're looking out for them, that the solution you provide will be the right one based on their needs. So I think that's really important, not to lead with solutions, but to lead with your own personality and yourself.
Definitely.
Now, in terms of like their mission and how to present the mission, how do you kind of express to people what you're all about? Obviously, people have these preconceptions about reverse mortgages, probably like they do about long-term care insurance. How do you overcome that initial barrier that people might have in terms of stereotypes that they think of?
Yeah, so certainly telling stories. Storytelling, I think, is one of the most effective ways to communicate a message, because people resonate with stories. They don't resonate with statistics or information. And so if they can resonate with a story that you're telling, if you're telling a story about how, the children, the adult children of a client of yours have peace of mind now because their parent bought long-term care insurance, or for me, what an impact a reverse mortgage had on the lives of our clients and how that trickles down to their children and grandchildren. So really conveying the message that you want people to understand, but doing it in a very intentional way. And I think storytelling is a fantastic way to do that. Testimonials are also an unbelievable way for folks to hear what you do, why you do it, and why it's important from somebody other than you, right? Somebody that you've either helped, somebody that you've come in contact with that maybe you didn't help. One of the most powerful testimonials that we have on our website is a gentleman that we offered a reverse mortgage to, went through the educational process with him, and I identified it just wasn't the right fit for him, right? I mean, could I sold him a reverse mortgage? Probably. But in identifying that he wasn't suitable, the credibility that I was able to convey to him in that I'm somebody that's trustworthy. If it's not a scenario for you, if it's not the right product for you, I'm not going to try to sell you something. We're not trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. And then we got him to leave a video. He actually offered to leave a video message saying exactly that Steve didn't try to fit a square peg into a round hole. So getting your clients to speak on your behalf, I think, is probably the most powerful thing that you can do to help overcome some of the myths and misconceptions about both long-term care insurance planning and reverse mortgages.
Perfect. And I think we're going to talk about this in more detail as we go into some of the later topics here. But let's kind of talk about how you created your personal brand. And you mentioned kind of having a company behind you, but needing to differentiate that. Tell us a little bit about that concept, because I don't think a lot of people think of differentiating their personal and their corporate brand.
Yeah. So look, I'm not going to lie and say it wasn't a process, right? It was a process. The insurance world is heavily regulated, and we all answer to compliance officers. The mortgage world is no different, but it can be done. So don't let compliance or scare you from doing this. At the end of the day, we're all our own personal brand, whether we have a fancy logo or a website or not. We all represent ourselves. We all have products and services that we offer, but people buy from people. They don't buy from companies. And so the more they can fall in love with you, the more likely you are going to be the winning choice. And so when I was putting together my brand, I wanted to do three things. I wanted to captivate the audience. I wanted to cultivate the audience. And ultimately, of course, I want to convert the audience into paying customers. But I started out just by really capturing the essence of what I'm doing every day to educate the community. And so a lot of the content that we've created, a lot of the brand building has really just been organic, right? I have somebody that came in and took pictures of me just working in the office, pictures of me behind my desk, pictures of me engaging with clients. When we held seminars, we captured all of this content. And so a lot of it we were doing intentionally, but to the audience, it seems like, oh, this is just what Steve does every day. This is how he's separating himself from the rest of the competition. And so sometimes it's just capturing the essence of what you're doing every day. We're all helping people. We're all great at what we do. At least I hope so. But how do we let the audience know that? Video, pictures, and just making sure the audience understands how hard you're working every day to serve your clients. That was really the essence of how I tried to build my brand.
Right. And I think that one of the key things you said was people buy from people. And it's important to put yourself out there. I go to a lot of different websites and I can't even find who the person is behind the company. I think that's the first page that almost everyone looks for now is the About Us page, right? Or something about who's behind the scenes. Having your picture, your video, bio there is so important because that's what's starting to establish the trust and the relationship. And ultimately, when that client's in front of you, that's what leads to ending up with having that be a happy client.
And I'm glad, Mark, you mentioned picture, because I think a headshot is the most critical component to any brand. If you don't have a professional headshot, you're behind the eight ball, right? Because people need to, they're going to see you. And if it's a good headshot with a little bit of a smile and you're in a suit and tie or a nice outfit for the ladies, it resonates with them, right? They're going to like you just by looking at your picture, or they're going to be turned off either by seeing no picture or by having a picture shot on your iPhone or even worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in my case, I actually have a picture with my 4-year-old son, which some people might say, "Hey, that's unprofessional." Well, that's me, and that's how I present myself. And I work remotely with a lot of people. I do video meetings. My kids sometimes jump into those meetings, right? These days, a lot of people are getting
happened to me this morning.
Yeah, exactly. And so but that's real, and I think that's actually what people remember a lot of times about you. Is that you're family oriented and you have certain values and that type of thing. Let's kind of jump into the next segment of this, which involves, you had mentioned captivate, cultivate, and convert. I changed cultivate to nurture. I like that word nurturing when you're doing marketing. But let's talk about attracting people to you and how to use your reputation to do that. So we're going to start off by looking at what intent-based marketing means and how to create content. And then we'll kind of go to your website a little bit and look at your online presence and then a little bit about how do we distribute content. I think this is really the cornerstone of really getting in front of people and making people aware of what you're trying to share with them. So I think this is actually one of the most important segments of this. So tell us a little bit first about what does intent-based marketing mean to you?
Yeah, so intent-based marketing is really a long-term play, right? So I think most people focus on the segment of clientele that is ready to buy right now, right? And they put all of their time and their energy and their effort into maybe the 5 to 7% of leads or prospective clients that are going to make a buying decision within the next 30 to 60 days. But in reality, the real ROI is in the 50 to 60% of the people who are going to buy at some point, but it may not be for 3 months, 6 months, maybe even a year. And so intent-based marketing is dripping them with education, empowering them, really reinforcing yourself as the thought leader, as the brand, again, telling stories and hopefully resonating with stories in short form and long form content. Ultimately, with the intent on hopefully selling them your service or product, but really the intent is educating them. And through educating them, they will come to you. You're not going to necessarily have to go to them. But I think intentionally focusing on the segment of the market that's going to buy, not in the short future, but maybe in the not so distant future, 3 to 6 months out, that's where everybody's missing the boat.
Yeah, and I would say that especially with long-term care insurance, I've done research on this, and about 40% of all the sales in long-term care insurance come from clients that have been in your pipeline for 2 or more years. And so that's kind of an intimidating statistic for a lot of agents and advisors out there. They're thinking about, like you said, how do I get this person to get a plan today, and why is it in their best interest to get a plan today? But you have to remember that the vast majority of people, they're not going to be ready quite yet. And so you have to, they call it drip marketing. You have to put out content cumulatively over time that's A, building a relationship, but B, it's going to be there when they're ready to buy, right? And people like to buy, they just want to be sold.
It takes 8 to 10 impressions for somebody to associate you with your brand, right? So the prospective client needs to see 8 to 10 times, right? Stephen Celeste reverse mortgage, Stephen Celeste reverse mortgage before it resonates to them and it clicks. And then when they think reverse mortgage, naturally they're going to think Stephen Celeste. Same thing with you professionals, right? You should be engaging your clients in a meaningful way, dripping content, relevant content, over and over and over again. An email list is an incredible way to do that. It's simple, right? Are you just capturing the emails of your prospective clients and leads and then doing just a simple email campaign where at least, maybe once a month or twice a month, you're engaging them. You're giving them something of substance, right? Something relevant that's happening right now. We all know, right? The coronavirus is the hot topic. Are you helping guide your clients through these turbulent times? Are you a thought leader? Do they look to you as a problem solver? So when they do have a problem that needs to be solved, they come to you and not the competition. That's right. Intent-based marketing.
Right. And I think you'd mentioned 8 to 10 times before people see who you are. The ability to couple that with what you see here, educational marketing, with messages that are actually designed to help people learn, not only enhances your brand and your reputation and the trust that they have for you, but that by the time they get into a meeting with you, maybe a one-on-one meeting, instead of having 90 minutes about how long-term care works, you've actually educated them up to that point, and your meetings actually become much more effective, and the client has done their own research, and you can be more productive that way too.
And what happens as well is they become excited to meet you, right? They've seen you time and time again. You've also you've kind of become this mythical figure to them, kind of somewhat of a celebrity, especially if you're going to engage media, which I know I don't want to get ahead of myself, but the more times they see you and the more they respect that you're trying to educate them, you're not trying to sell them. One, they are going to reach out to you. There's no better scenario than that instead of you reaching out to the client, because we all know an inbound call is going to convert at a lot higher rate. You're probably going to have a higher fee on somebody that's inbound versus outbound. But the sales process, once they do re-engage with you, is going to be much quicker.
Absolutely. Let's jump into the second topic, which is actually creating the content. One of the ways that we actually met each other, Steve, is I do a lot of videos for LinkedIn. And one of the things that I believe in is obviously marketing and then productivity, making sure we can produce content that's easy to produce, it's fun to produce, and we can get a lot of out there, right? Because it has a certain time span, and then we're on to the next piece. But you were gracious enough to do a video with us talking about reverse mortgages and helping me learn about it. But that you had mentioned a couple of times before, videos are really important. Why do you see that the videos have been so important for your business?
So video for me is what has ultimately led to opportunities such as the news media engaging with us. And so now we've become the go-to housing wealth experts in the country. So we're having media from across the country reach out to us. And it all started with what I talked about before, which was just, I hired a videographer. I had him come out to, record me and capture the essence of what we were doing every day. And we just started to build organic content. And then we repackaged that organic content. We added music to it. We put some graphics in. We intentionally tried to turn me into the next Tom Selleck of reverse mortgages. I don't quite have the mustache yet, although the beard is getting really out of control with not being able to get my haircut here. But we were very intentional in trying to leverage my brand and take that brand national. And video was an unbelievable way to do that. Because the audience can feel like they know me. I've become somewhat of a local, I don't even like to say celebrity because I just sound pompous in doing so, but sort of a local celebrity in the mortgage market, at least. And I wouldn't be able to convey that message through a written format. And on social media, how many times do you see somebody posting something and you read the first sentence and you disengage? Video, especially video done well, especially with closed captioning, so people can view your video and understand what you're talking about without having to play sound. Just think about how you watch video on your phone. How often do you use sound? I think making sure that you're closed captioning your videos and just doing video right can really help in leveraging a solid brand.
Yeah, and I would say there is no one formula for doing it either. There's a lot of different mechanisms. There's so many providers out there that are doing it, through subscription services. We created our own process. My goal there was to be able to do a video in 20 minutes or less. It was kind of a bold goal. I wasn't putting as much money into it as Steve, as you have with building a studio and a videographer. But using Zoom, I was able to do the same type of thing, and they're raw, but they're real and it conveys personality. And I can tell you, it's probably the one thing that I'm most grateful for having done, to build my business. And now we've done, in the last 6 months, probably over 100 videos because it's easy enough to produce them. So,
and that's a great example. That's a great example, Mark, too, of you being you and me being me and having the same end result, right? For me, in a way, I'm almost too cautious of my branding because I'm not as vulnerable on video. My videos tend to be a little overproduced. I have a professional editing them. I think what you're doing with your videos to the folks here on the webinar today, far easier to obtain, and every bit as effective, and it really just depends on what your brand is. For me, I like, maybe it's in my own mind, I tend to come off a little bit more polished, sometimes too polished in the way that I want to produce and publish my videos, but there's a lot of ways to skin a cat and get the same results.
Now we're going to jump into the next, which talks about your online presence. So obviously you have content. It can be written format, of course, as well as videos. But you had mentioned that your website is so important. And I'm actually going to go to your website. Can you tell us a little bit more about kind of how your website's set up and how it helps your business in terms of captivating your audience?
Yeah, happy to. So, and then look, I've developed this website kind of on my own with the help of a website producer. This is about 5 or 6 years ago, and it's been a labor of love ever since. I can tell you, we've made every mistake that there possibly could be, and we've learned from our mistakes, and we've refined our efforts. And I think the website is in a really good place today where it's generating leads, and there's a lot of ROI that comes from the website. You'll notice first, the call to action is above the fold, right? If you're looking at this on any computer, that red button, request my complimentary analysis now, you're going to find that above the fold. And when I say above the fold, you're not going to have to scroll to get down to it. And so everything that you need to know about me, my brand, my organization, and what we do is on that very first piece of information that you're looking at. You don't have to go anywhere. Who are we? We're National Reverse Mortgage Professionals. We're the Stephen J. Celeste Group. We're providing equity-based retirement solutions take 60 seconds now to request your complimentary analysis. So if you go no further, you know who I am, you know what we do. Now, you don't know why we do it yet, but we get to that in the next drop down. But if you're interested, we're capturing your information right away. We're also using branding right away. So Stephen appears on, here's all the stations that I appear on. Some are paid, some are unpaid. Fox 45, WBAL TV 11, those are free segments where they're having me on as the reverse mortgage expert. Some we're paying for because we're doing radio and TV ads right now as well. And then we have the video, which is an encapsulation. It's about a 3-minute encapsulation of who we are, what we do, and why we do it. And so within the video, there's clips of speaking engagements, there's clips of media. You can watch this video and understand pretty quickly if I'm the type of guy that you want to work with, who we are, what we do, why we do it, why we're so passionate about it. And then another call to action. So every section of the website has a call to action. So if you're interested in that particular section, look no further. You can get in contact with us right now.
Very cool. Now, you'd also mentioned to me the Google My Business, and that's a free service that Google offers. What's the benefit of having someone set that up with Google?
I would argue Google My Business is likely more important than your website. Google My Business is your way to control how you appear on Google. It's free. Google offers it to you for free. You plug in your business listing, your address, your phone number. There's also a link to send clients to leave reviews. And those reviews will be on your Google My Business page, which is basically a landing page encapsulating your business. But it also allows you to post to Google. And really, Mark, the more engaged you are with Google, the more you give back to Google, the more they're going to give back to you. And so if you have a Google My Business page and that page is completely filled out, all the fields are filled out, you get people to leave reviews on there, you're engaged with it, you post on there regularly, your status, your ranking on Google is really going to shoot up.
Very cool. All right, jump to the next segment here, which is distribution of content. We talked a little bit about the website and Google My Business, but talk a little bit about social media and how you use social media to distribute the content that you produce.
Yeah, social media is really, in the essence, it's how we built our brand. I think I've gotten more media exposure from LinkedIn than any other platform. Social media is critical. Today, cell phones are the new TVs, right? Think about how you view content. Likely it's not on your TV, it's not on your computer, it's on your cell phone. And so being mobile friendly, let's go back to the website for a moment, making sure that your website is mobile friendly. Look at it on an iPad, look at it on an iPhone, make sure that it's easy to view. Regarding social media, LinkedIn, I think, is our number one platform. And I want to throw out some stats here real quick, Mark. There are 500 million users of LinkedIn. It's a staggering number. About half, 250 million, post at least once a month or are engaged or logged on to LinkedIn at least once a month. But only 4 million are actually posting content, creating content, and posting on LinkedIn at least once a week. And so there's a huge void and an even greater opportunity to be a thought leader on LinkedIn. If you're posting content on LinkedIn, you're one of only 4 million of 500 million total users. And so LinkedIn is it's a sea of opportunity. If you leverage it right, the opportunity is massive. And there's also LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which is it provides you a separate experience from LinkedIn. It allows you to separate qualified leads, separate who you actually want to engage with on a daily basis, and while eliminating the rest of the noise of LinkedIn, because we all know how noisy LinkedIn can be. You get a lot of not only job offers, but a lot of salespeople approaching you. So a good tip that I think everybody should take advantage of is look into LinkedIn Sales Navigator.
Yeah, and the other thing from my perspective is probably about 95% of the people that I know in the industry and who know me, I've actually never met in person, and I probably first met on LinkedIn. Like what? We met on LinkedIn, and you get to know somebody very well through that process. It's kind of amazing how you may never even have spoken to somebody, but the first time you get on the phone with them, it's like you've known each other for years, because you kind of have.
Yeah.
You just have been watching their content for a long time. Let's also jump into the seminar world. We do a lot of webinars, and we do them on behalf of a lot of our Buddy INS partners or the long-term care agents we work with. But the live seminars, I know, are a foundation for how you grew your business. Tell us a little bit about where seminars play a role.
Yeah, seminars have been our bread and butter for a decade plus. I found there's no better way. Now, keep in mind, we have a senior clientele. And so knowing our clientele, knowing how they consume their information, while yes, they are consuming it on their phone, they are consuming it digitally nowadays. Everybody's forced to consume information digitally right now. But seniors like to see you in person. They like to touch you. They like to shake your hand. They like to really sit down with you and share a meal and break bread and get to know you before they decide if they want to work with you. And so about a decade ago, we decided to do reverse mortgage seminars, particularly because there's a large education component into what a reverse mortgage is and why it's so important in today's retirement planning. So when we started doing the seminars, probably in retrospect, again, one of the best decisions that I've made is we started recording them. And we had no idea that we were going to take this information and turn it into a national brand, or we really didn't have a distribution strategy, but I wanted to at least showcase what we were doing to the public and hopefully get more people to attend our seminars. So the first seminar we ever did, I think we maybe had 15, 20 people. 10 years ago, the last one that we did was in October. We had 135 people. So these seminars have really taken on a life of their own. They're a dinner seminar. I'm sure everybody's gotten an invite for a dinner seminar, likely from a financial advisor in your neighborhood. We try to get out to a local restaurant that's well known at a pretty low price point, and we put on a presentation for them. And the presentation isn't really PowerPoint driven. It's just me chatting it up with them, doing a Q&A, really engaging them. They get to know me. But what it's also done is it's turned me into a public speaker, almost by accident. I never thought that I would be a public speaker. And by holding the seminars and capturing the content from the seminars, I've gotten paid and unpaid speaking engagement opportunities where I'm going to conferences speaking. There's a lot of opportunity that has come from holding seminars.
Yeah, and my experience mimics yours, except that I started with webinars and started more in the B2B world, working at the home office and talking to agents and advisors. But again, like you, I was not a born natural public speaker. But doing 1,000 webinars will change that. It's a lot of practice you get doing these. And like you said, it builds your reputation and your brand. I'm sure a lot of people on this call have attended one of the webinars that I've done in the past, and that's probably how they got to know me. So again, building your reputation, you can do it with seminars and webinars. And then how does that
media as well? Let me touch on that real quick, Mark, as well. When we hold a seminar, we also put a press release out. And when we've actually had media come out to cover our seminars because nobody else is doing what we do. There's a lot of competition in the Mid-Atlantic area for reverse mortgages. Very few, if any, are holding seminars. And if they are, they're not attracting 135 people. And the media has been huge in helping us drive that audience. Media is always searching for content. And if you position your content correctly, you can pitch it to the media and they'll be more than happy to come out and cover you.
Very cool. That's exactly kind of the segue. I know you've been on local media, so I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, how did you get those opportunities, especially the free opportunities you got with those major, networks to be on the TV?
Yeah, it all kind of happened by accident. Started with seminars. We started these seminars 10 years ago. We published them in the local newspaper to promote them. We put flyers out. We sent direct mail out. We had a couple reporters come out. They covered it. I learned very quickly that media is leverage, and media can turn you into a local celebrity quicker than anything else, especially if it's a local newscast. Our local newscast, say what you want about the CNNs or Foxes or whatever side of the aisle you sit on. For the most part, the local media cuts it straight down the middle. They're respected. Most people that watch a local newscast have been watching that local newscast their entire life. You normally stick with one. That's the one that your parents watched. It's the one that you watch now. So the credibility that being on local media can provide is incredible. We realized this, and since then, I've hired a publicist. She now pitches me across the country. So we're getting free media exposure, both locally here in the Baltimore metro area. I just did a show in Tennessee the other day. I'm doing a show in Florida next week. I've done multiple shows across the country, and media has been certainly an unbelievable way to leverage our brand.
Yeah, and make sure that, like Steve did, you put those opportunities on your website. It's not just a one and done where I'm going to get leads. it's really recording that, right? You have access even to the show afterwards, putting it up there so people can see it for as long as you want to have it there.
And then engage with the producers and editors of these shows, right? There's so much media across the country, and they're all looking for relevant content. And so if you have a topic that is relevant, or even if you don't think it's relevant, it could be there, right? There's somebody that needs your services, right? Again, it comes back to storytelling. Just cold calling or emailing these editors, you'd be shocked. Now, I have a publicist doing it on my behalf, but it didn't start that way, right? I learned very quickly that this is the direction I wanted to go, and I knew that if I was going to get there, I needed somebody with a deeper Rolodex that has these built-in relationships, so I don't have to cold call and email these producers and editors. But connect with them on LinkedIn. They're all on LinkedIn. Connect with them, like their content, comment on their content, make sure they know who you are, what you do, and why you do it. So when they have a story, no different than if you have if a client has a need for a product, you want them to think of you, think of the media in the same light. If the media has a story or an opportunity that would involve you, are they going to think of you, or are they going to think of somebody different?
Right. And I know a lot of people out there in the audience have done that, with written content, AARP magazine, for example, or the U.S. News and World Report, just connecting with people, like you said, on LinkedIn gives you these opportunities. So take advantage of them.
Yeah.
We're going to get into the next segment here, the nurture segment. So once you have an audience and you start to build it, how do you continue to, stay in touch with them? We're going to, there's different strategies that you might use depending on what your source is. We talked a little bit about social media and websites and seminars and webinars. Direct mail is something that I see a lot of agents out there using effectively. And I know that that's a core part of your strategy too. In fact, I think that might be one of your larger revenue sources, right? Direct mail.
It's the largest, and it's not even close. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so tell us a little bit about your process there. So it's not necessarily a digital process. This is kind of a traditional approach, but what's your secret to making that so successful for you on the direct mail side?
Yeah. So direct mail is certainly alive and well. Now it may work a little bit better for our demographic because seniors still, they respond pretty well to direct mail. They're opening their mail. They're actually getting physical mail, but everything isn't on email. And so I think it works perhaps a little bit better for a senior demographic, but the right direct mail piece makes all the difference. Now for us, what we've done, we wanted to be able to send out large quantities of direct mail and know with confidence that we're never going to miss a phone call. So we actually have a call center that all of our calls are routed into. They're local. They're all English speaking. They all have done training with us, and they have individual scripts per each mail campaign. And so they're answering the phone on our behalf 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that's my way of knowing that we can send out mail in large quantities and not have to have the infrastructure and the staff here locally in my office to field all of those calls. So that's step number one that we've taken. The other reason I think direct mail is so successful for us is our follow-up system. When the call center inbounds the lead, they're putting them into our CRM, and our CRM has become our lifeblood. There's a lot of automation built into the CRM. There's drip campaigns. There's automatic emails. Once that client calls in, they're going to continuously, we go back to this intent-based marketing. We start intent-based marketing to them from the very first second we receive their call. So within probably about a 5-minute window, they're getting an email and they're getting a text from us through our CRM when that call comes into the call center. So the engagement starts, the branding starts, the marketing starts from that very second.
Yeah, and I think the key thing is, you don't have to be doing all the different channels like Steve is. Obviously, they all complement each other. Pick one that really works for you, that you're really passionate about, that you enjoy doing. Focus on it, but build a systematic process around it, right? So you can continue to do it, and then people will get to know you that way. It's about consistency with marketing. I think that's probably the number one thing. We're going to kind of talk a little bit about this too, is, you have to understand the business aspect of it, right? How much time are you investing, or money or resources, and what return are you getting on that? Steve, you mentioned that you use a process with the CRM. How would you recommend people in the audience, how do they kind of measure and track the return on their marketing spend here?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, ROI is everything, right? And so you need to be able to pivot on the fly. You need to understand what works, what doesn't work. Now you got to be patient, right? I wouldn't send, if you're going to do direct mail is a process, right? We go back to that 8 to 10 impressions on social media. A client may need to see 8 to 10 mail pieces before they respond. So it's the same math, right? Think of direct mail no differently than social media. You need to put something in front of them repeatedly, time and time again, so when they do have a problem, they can identify you with that problem. But then it's all about tracking. And so for us, every direct mail piece has a unique identifier, and they're providing that unique identifier to the person, to the operator that's answering the phone. That's how we can track who comes from what campaign. In our CRM, we have different campaigns, and we have trackers for each campaign, right? So I know how many direct mail pieces I sent out this month. I know how many calls or emails came in, and I can tell you in 90 days how much business we closed off that one mail piece. So know your numbers. I think, look, you're all savvy business, either owners or operators or salespeople. We all know that if it's not working, you're going to know pretty quickly. You may feel it in your gut, but sometimes we tend to think things are working better than they actually are. You got to know your numbers. You got to track everything, because that's going to be the only way to determine what's actually working and what just feels good and looks good, but may not be generating any revenue.
Yeah, and I think it's so critical to have a strategy when it comes down to this. When you're building your reputation, it's very hard to measure the impact of that. But one way to do that is to see what your end conversion rates are, because that reputation is really what's going to lead to higher conversion rates. I think you mentioned that you have a much higher success rate, whether it's direct mail or another channel, especially even locally, because people might know your name already. When they receive the mail, they're more likely to open it up because you built that brand. So it all ties
For sure.
together that way.
And I think it's important too to differentiate branding and marketing. They're two completely different things. Branding is a long game, marketing is the short game. Marketing strategies are always evolving. Branding is consistent. Branding is what people are going to remember you by. It's how you're known. Branding is a lot more expensive. So you may need to focus more on marketing first, especially if you're a startup or you're new to the business. Perhaps it's marketing. Perhaps it's figuring out how are you going to generate revenue next month instead of how are people going to remember me 2 years from now. So it really just depends on what phase of business you're in, how big your checkbook is, quite honestly. But also a lot of these strategies don't really cost a lot of money. My call center costs me next to nothing. It costs me half of what I would pay a secretary to answer my phones. And so look at these different things. You may think that some of these strategies are expensive or hard to do. They're really not.
Right. And I think that's key. And you can't be afraid to experiment, especially with what's going on in the digital world. It's constantly evolving. You have to try new things, and kind of like being a salesperson, you can't be afraid to fail. You're going to try some things that are not going to work out, but you're going to learn from them. As long as you understand what your spend is, you can actually experiment with a lot of different things and see what works best for you. Now, I wish I had
a picture of what my website looked like 5 years ago. But we had to start somewhere, and that's my point. Start somewhere. You're gonna adapt. You're gonna pivot. You're gonna make changes. But you got to get started. And if branding is something that you want to take seriously, I'm also happy to talk to you on a one-on-one basis at another time. We can schedule a call.
Absolutely. Now we're going to get into the last segment. Keep in mind, I see some people raising their hand. Feel free to type in your questions in the Q&A or the chat box, and we'll even stay long if there's a lot of questions in there. But going into the last subject here, convert, really just kind of a wrap up. We had talked about being consistent. You mentioned early on about customer testimonials. We actually do videos where we ask the agents we work with to tell their own stories about clients they've worked with. So they're almost like self-told client testimonials. But you had mentioned to me that one of the most important things you've done for your business is the automation, and we've also are heavily involved with the process and automation and productivity. Tell me about automation in your world. What does that mean, and how can someone in the audience do it? Because it sounds like it can be a complicated process.
There's some time and effort that goes into it up front to set up certain workflows and automation. I would say if I can do it, anybody can do it. I am not a techie guy whatsoever. I reach out for help if and when I need it. I oftentimes outsource a lot of projects. I partnered with somebody at the CRM company that I was working with, so I'm paying them for the CRM service. I had them do the automation for me. I told them what I wanted. Said, look, I'm a paying customer of yours. If you want me to continue to pay as a customer, you're going to have to set up this automation for me, and they were more than happy to. So automation is really what's going to save you time. It's to ensure that if somebody comes in as a lead at 2 o'clock in the morning, they're getting the same email and text and correspondence from me that they would have that if they came in 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Setting up nurture campaigns so they get an email every 3 weeks or every month, both for your B2B and partners and your B2C consumers and clients. Automation is so easy nowadays, and there's a lot of services. Zapier, for one. Zapier is a service that connects one piece of technology to another. And so on our website, if you click that red call to action button, you fill out a form. Zapier is bringing that information over to our CRM. Mm-hmm. Easy as pie. Zapier, and I think I'm paying like $50 a month for Zapier, and I use it a ton. And there's a lot of other technology out there. BombBomb for video, or Dub is another video platform where you can send video through email. It increases your engagement. You can automate on there. They'll work with you. All these tech companies will work with you to automate. But embrace automation. It will be a game changer, I promise you.
Yeah, and I'm a huge proponent of it. We use probably 20 different technologies with Buddy INS. I call it our tech stack, but it's really a number of different subscription services that we are customizing. We're connecting. We're using Zapier as well, amongst a lot of other things. And, it's often not the first software that we actually use that ends up being the winner in the long run. Sometimes we have to switch different pieces of it depending on what we need to do. Again, it's that experimentation process and not being afraid to try different things. But now that we've done it, we've saved a ton of time, and our marketing can be 24/7, and it's kind of going on behind the scenes so that we're actually saving. It's almost like having a team of marketers or salespeople that are working for you at all hours.
Yeah. And if you have a sales team that you manage, it's the only way really that you can ensure that the process that you want followed is to automate it for them. Right. I'm a big believer of salespeople should be selling. They shouldn't be worrying about technology or automation. So I've set it up for my team. I know when their emails are going out. I know when texts are going out. And it gives me peace of mind. I sleep a lot easier at night knowing that my clients are engaged in the way that I know they need to be engaged.
Very cool. All right, so we're going to wrap this up and open this up for some questions. Again, if you're more interested in Buddy INS, I know a lot of you are hearing about it for the first time, just go to our website, and then there's a partner opportunities button at the top, and just let me know what you're interested in. You can schedule a call with me. If you need to talk to Steve as well, his contact information you can see on the screen there. He's opened up the door so you can give him a call or email him if you want to know more about what he's doing. He's also happy to share, and I appreciate that as well. And we're going to have a series of these webinars probably at the end of every month. So look out for another invite, and we'll kind of dig into some of these topics. I know this one was more high level, but if you want to dig into some of the specific components, just email me if you have topics you'd like us to cover, and we'll find, again, a speaker that's an expert in that area, and we'll cover it.